Some marriages don't end with shouting. They end with a sentence whispered too carelessly. A sentence that reveals everything someone tried to hide. The city of Chicago hung beneath a thin layer of rain, its streets reflecting gold and white from endless rows of streetlights. Inside the high-rise apartment overlooking Lake Michigan, Daniel Harper stood by the window, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled, a glass of bourbon untouched in his hand. It was nearly 1:30 a.m. Emily was late. Again. Daniel wasn't the kind of man who checked the clock obsessively. At least he hadn't been before. But lately, time felt different, longer, heavier, like every minute carried something unsaid. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Emily, leaving now, don't wait up. He stared at the message longer than necessary. Don't wait up, he repeated under his breath, as if testing how it felt out loud. The rain outside thickened, tapping harder against the glass like a quiet insistence. Daniel walked into the kitchen, setting his glass down untouched. The apartment was spotless. As always, Emily liked it that way. Clean lines, neutral tones, everything in its place. It looked like a home staged for a magazine. Not lived in. Not anymore. He remembered when things were different. When Emily used to come home and tell him everything. Every annoying coworker, every small victory, every ridiculous office rumor. Back when silence between them felt comfortable, not loaded. Now, silence felt like distance. And distance felt like something dangerous. The door finally clicked open at 2:07 a.m. Emily stumbled in, heels in one hand, her other hand dragging along the wall for balance. Her hair, usually sleek and perfect, fell loosely around her face. Her lipstick was slightly smudged. Daniel's chest tightened. "You're home," he said quietly. Emily looked up, blinking as if surprised to see him. "Daniel," she murmured, her voice soft, slurred. "Why are you still awake? I could ask you the same thing." She laughed a short, uneven sound, and kicked off her heels near the door. "It was a work thing, you know how it is." Daniel watched her carefully. "Yeah," he said, "I know." She walked past him, the faint scent of alcohol and something unfamiliar lingering in the air. Not perfume, not quite. Something else. "You should have come," she added, dropping her purse on the counter. "Ryan was there. You'd like him." Ryan. The name landed heavier than it should have. "Your boss?" Daniel asked. Emily nodded, already moving toward the bedroom. "He's different." "Different?" Daniel followed her slowly. "Different how?" But she didn't answer. She had already collapsed onto the bed, half asleep, her words dissolving before they could fully form. Daniel stood there, watching her. For a moment, he considered letting it go, letting the night end the way it always did, with unanswered questions quietly buried under routine. But something in him refused. He sat on the edge of the bed. "Emily," he said gently. "Hey, talk to me." She shifted slightly, eyes still closed, and then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said it. "I wish you were more like him." The room went completely still. Daniel didn't move, didn't breathe. "What?" he asked, his voice barely holding. Emily didn't respond. She had already slipped fully into sleep, but it didn't matter, because the damage was done. Daniel sat there for a long time, staring at her. "I wish you were more like him." The sentence replayed in his mind over and over again, each time sharper than the last. Who was him? Ryan? Someone else? And more importantly, what did he have that Daniel didn't? By the time the sun began to rise, Daniel was still awake, still sitting in the same spot, still trying to understand how a single sentence could make everything feel like it was already over. Morning arrived without warmth. The pale Chicago sunlight slipped through the blinds in thin, indifferent lines, stretching across the bedroom floor like quiet accusations. Daniel hadn't slept, not even for a minute. He was still sitting in the same chair by the window when Emily stirred behind him. A soft groan, the rustle of sheets. "God," she muttered, her voice dry. "My head is killing me." Daniel didn't turn around. For a moment, he said nothing, just watched the city move on as if nothing had changed, as if words didn't have the power to fracture something invisible but essential. Behind him, Emily shifted again. "Daniel?" she called, her tone slightly confused. "Did you sleep out here?" Still silence. That's when she noticed. The stillness. The kind that doesn't belong to a normal morning. She sat up slowly, pressing her fingers to her temple. "Hey, what's wrong?" Daniel finally turned. His expression wasn't angry. That would have been easier. It was something colder, quieter, like something had already settled inside him overnight. "You don't remember?" he asked. Emily frowned slightly. "Remember what?" A pause. And then, "You came home late," Daniel said evenly. "You were drunk." Emily let out a faint breath, rubbing her eyes. "Yeah, it was a long night. The client dinner turned into drinks, and then you said something." That stopped her. Her hand froze mid-motion. "What?" she asked carefully. Daniel stood up slowly, walking toward her, each step measured, controlled. "You said something," he repeated, And I need to know if you meant it. Emily blinked, trying to piece together fragments of a night she barely remembered. I don't, Daniel. I was drunk. I probably said a lot of things. His jaw tightened slightly. This wasn't just anything. There was something in his voice now, something that made her stomach drop. What did I say? She asked, quieter this time. Daniel held her gaze, and then he said it. You said, I wish you were more like him. The words hung in the air between them, heavy, unavoidable. Emily's expression shifted, not dramatically, not in a way most people would notice. But Dania noticed. A flicker. A hesitation that lasted less than a second. But it was there. She started, then stopped. And that was enough. That tiny pause, that fraction of uncertainty, it hit Dania harder than the sentence itself. Who is him, Emily? He asked. She looked away, and that, more than anything, felt like confirmation. Daniel, I was drunk, she said, her voice suddenly defensive. You're taking this way too seriously. Am I? His tone didn't rise, but something underneath it sharpened. You don't even remember saying it? I don't remember exactly, no, she admitted. But people say stupid things when they drink. It doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean anything. Daniel let out a quiet, humorless breath. Then say that again, he said. Emily frowned. What? Say it again. Look at me and say it doesn't mean anything. She hesitated. And there it was again, that same flicker, smaller this time, but still there. Daniel, this is ridiculous, she said, standing up from the bed. You're turning one drunk comment into what? Some kind of accusation? I didn't accuse you of anything. Then what is this? She shot back, gesturing between them. An interrogation? Daniel didn't answer right away, because the truth was, he didn't know what this was, not yet. I just want to understand, he said finally. Emily exhaled sharply, walking past him toward the bathroom. There's nothing to understand. The door closed behind her with a soft but final click. Daniel stood there, unmoving. The sound of running water filled the silence. He stared at the closed door. There's nothing to understand. But there was. He could feel it. Something just beneath the surface. Something that didn't quite fit together anymore. And once you notice that, you can't unsee it. Later that morning, the apartment felt unfamiliar. Not physically, but emotionally. Like something invisible had shifted its place. Emily moved through the kitchen, making coffee like she always did. Same routine, same quiet efficiency. But now Daniel watched everything differently. The way she avoided eye contact. The way her phone stayed face down on the counter. The way she checked it quickly, subtly, when she thought he wasn't looking. Do you want coffee? She asked without turning around. Sure. Her voice sounded normal. Too normal. That bothered him more than anything. She handed him a mug, their fingers brushing briefly. The contact felt distant, like something rehearsed instead of natural. Big day today? Daniel asked. Emily nodded. Yeah, meeting with Ryan and the new client. There it was again, Ryan. This time, Daniel didn't hide his reaction. Ryan, he repeated. Emily glanced at him. What? That's your boss, right? Yeah, I told you that. You also said I'd like him. She gave a small shrug, taking a sip of her coffee. I think you would. Why? Another pause. Another tiny, almost imperceptible delay. Because he's easy to talk to, she said. Confident. He knows how to read people. Daniel's grip tightened slightly around the mug. Confident. Easy to talk to. He let the words settle. Compare themselves quietly against who he was. Reserved, measured, predictable. I see, he said. Emily looked at him for a moment, as if trying to read something in his expression. Daniel, she began, softer now. You're overthinking this. Maybe. Maybe he was. But something deep inside him disagreed. Because overthinking didn't explain the way she hesitated, or the way that one sentence felt too specific to be meaningless, or the way another man's name now lingered in every silence between them. When Emily left for work, the apartment fell into a heavy quiet. Daniel stood by the window again, watching her disappear into the morning crowd below. He told himself to let it go, to be rational, to trust his wife. But instead, his mind replayed everything. Every word, every pause, every glance. I wish you were more like him. Whoever him was. He wasn't just a passing thought, he was something real, and Daniel could feel it. This wasn't the end of something, this was the beginning of it unraveling. That afternoon, Daniel found himself doing something he had never done before. He picked up his phone, scrolled to Emily's contact, and then, instead of calling, he opened her message history. Reading, searching, not for proof, not yet, but for something worse, a pattern. Doubt doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in, quietly, patiently, like water finding cracks in something that once felt unbreakable. By the third day, Daniel Harper realized he was no longer living in the same marriage. Nothing had officially changed. Emily still left for work at 8:15, still texted him around noon, still came home, eventually. But now, everything felt off. Not wrong in a way he could prove, just wrong in a way he could feel. It started with silence. Not the comfortable kind they used to share, the kind that felt like rest. This silence had weight. It stretched between them at dinner, lingered in the hallway, followed them into bed. Emily talked less, or maybe she talked differently. Surface-level things, meetings, clients, deadlines. But the details, the small human things she used to share, were gone. No more stories, no more laughter about something trivial. It was as if she had quietly removed a part of herself from him. And Daniel noticed. He noticed everything now. Thursday night. Emily came home at 9:47 p.m. Daniel was already at the dining table, his laptop open but untouched. "You're late," he said, without looking up. "Meeting ran over," she replied quickly, slipping off her coat. Too quickly. Daniel glanced at her. "Another one with Ryan?" The question landed softly, but its edge was sharp. Emily paused for half a second. "Yeah," she said. "We're working on a big account." Daniel nodded slowly. "Must be important." "It is." She walked into the kitchen, busying herself with something, just to avoid standing still. Daniel watched her from across the room. "You didn't text," he added. "I was busy." "You used to text." Emily exhaled, a trace of irritation slipping through. "Daniel, I can't update you every second of my day." "I didn't ask for every second." Silence. A fragile, tightening silence. "I just asked for something," he finished. Emily turned to face him then, her expression guarded. "You're doing it again," she said. "Doing what?" "This," she gestured vaguely between them, turning nothing into something. Daniel let out a quiet breath. "Is it nothing?" Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, and then she looked away. "I'm tired," she said. "Can we not do this tonight?" And just like that, the conversation ended. Not resolved, not addressed, just avoided. Later that night, Daniel lay awake beside her. Emily's breathing was steady, her back turned toward him. Distance, even in inches. He stared at the ceiling, his mind refusing to quiet. "I wish we were more like him." The sentence had changed. It wasn't just a memory anymore. It was a lens. Everything now passed through it. Every word, every silence, every glance at her phone. Especially that. It happened the next morning. A small thing, almost insignificant. Emily was in the shower, her phone lit up on the nightstand. Daniel didn't mean to look. At least that's what he told himself. But his eyes moved anyway. Just a reflex. Just curiosity. Just. The screen lit up again. A message preview. "Ryan. Last night was..." It disappeared before he could read the rest, but it was enough. Daniel's chest tightened. Last night was... what? He stared at the phone. It sat there innocently, silent again. Like it hadn't just shifted something inside him permanently. He didn't touch it. Didn't pick it up. Didn't unlock it. Not yet. Because this was still the edge, the line he hadn't crossed. But he stood there longer than he should have, staring at that screen, imagining the rest of the sentence, and somehow, every version of it felt worse than the last. At breakfast, Emily acted normal, too normal. She poured coffee, scrolled through emails, asked him if he needed anything from the store. Daniel watched her carefully. "You have a message this morning," he said casually. Emily froze, just for a second. Then she picked up her phone. "Oh, yeah," she said lightly. Work stuff. Daniel nodded. "From Ryan?" She hesitated. Then, "Yeah. Must be important." "It is." The same words, the same tone. Rehearsed. Or maybe just repeated enough to feel real. Daniel didn't push further, but something inside him shifted again. Because now, it wasn't just a feeling. It wasn't just a sentence whispered in the dark. It was something tangible. Something he could point to. Not proof, but close enough to make the silence unbearable. Days passed, and the pattern deepened. Late nights became normal. Phone calls taken in other rooms. Smiles at texts that she never explained. And the worst part? Emily didn't seem like she was trying very hard to hide it. Not because she didn't care, but because, somewhere deep down, she didn't think he would notice. And maybe, that hurt more than anything. Sunday afternoon, they sat across from each other at a small cafe downtown, a place they used to love. Now it felt like unfamiliar territory. Emily was on her phone again, typing. Daniel stirred his coffee slowly, watching her. "Who are you texting?" he asked. She didn't look up. "Just work." He smiled faintly, not amused, not warm, just aware. "Of course." Emily finally looked at him then. "What's that supposed to mean?" Daniel met her gaze. "It means I'm starting to feel like I don't know you anymore." The words landed heavier than he expected, because they were true. and truth has a way of cutting deeper than accusations. Emily's expression softened slightly, but not enough. Daniel, but she didn't finish, because neither of them knew what came after that. That night, as they lay in bed once more, closer than strangers, further than lovers, Daniel finally understood something he hadn't wanted to admit. Doubt doesn't need proof. It only needs enough silence to grow. And now, it was everywhere. He turned his head slightly, looking at Emily's sleeping figure beside him. And for the first time, he didn't just feel suspicious. He felt alone. Suspicion changes the way a person moves through the world. For Daniel Harper, it wasn't immediate. It wasn't loud. It was quiet, methodical, controlled. Because Daniel wasn't the kind of man who exploded. He was the kind who observed. And once he started, he couldn't stop. Monday morning arrived with a sense of quiet resolve. Daniel stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie with careful precision. His reflection looked the same, composed, polished, dependable. But behind his eyes, something had shifted. He no longer wanted reassurance. He wanted answers. He didn't ask Emily any more questions. That, in itself, was new. No passive remarks, no subtle probing, just silence. Emily noticed. Of course you did. You're quiet today, she said over breakfast, watching him from across the table. Just tired, Daniel replied. A simple lie, delivered smoothly. She studied him for a moment, as if trying to read what sat beneath the surface. But Daniel didn't give her anything. And eventually, she let it go. That was the first change. The second came later that afternoon. Daniel sat in his office, a sleek corner space overlooking downtown Chicago. Blueprints were spread across his desk, emails piling up unread. Normally, work grounded him. It gave him structure, clarity. Now, it felt distant, like trying to focus on details while something much larger loomed just out of sight. His phone rested beside his keyboard. He picked it up, strolled, paused, then typed the name into the search bar. Ryan Cole. The result appeared instantly. LinkedIn profile. Clean, impressive. Senior marketing director. Strategic leadership. Brand transformation. High-profile clients. Daniel clicked. Ryan's photo loaded. Mid-30s, maybe early 40s. Sharp jawline, relaxed smile. The kind of confidence that didn't need to prove itself. Daniel stared at the image longer than he intended. This was him. Him. I wish you were more like him. Daniel leaned back in his chair slowly. He could see it, even from a photograph. Ryan had presence, not loud, but effortless. The kind of man who walked into a room and didn't need to ask for attention. It came to him. Daniel closed the tab, but the image stayed. That evening he did something he never thought he would do. He followed Emily. It wasn't dramatic, no disguises, no elaborate planning, just distance. He left the office early, parked across the street from Emily's building, and waited. At 6:12 p.m. she walked out, not alone. Ryan Cole was beside her. Daniel's chest tightened, but his expression didn't change. He watched, observed, collected. They weren't touching, not exactly, but they stood closer than necessary. Too close for colleagues, too comfortable for something undefined. Ryan said something that made Emily laugh. Not the polite kind, the real kind. The kind Daniel hadn't heard in months. Something inside him shifted again. Not sharp this time, not explosive, just heavy. They started walking, side by side. Daniel followed at a distance, close enough to see, far enough not to be seen. They entered a bar 2 blocks down. Dim lighting, warm atmosphere, the kind of place people went to unwind, or to hide. Daniel waited a few minutes before going in. When he did, he chose a seat at the far end, out of sight, but with a clear view. Emily and Ryan sat at the bar, drinks already in front of them. This wasn't spontaneous, this was planned. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. He watched them talk, not just talk, connect. Ryan leaned in when he spoke, not aggressively, just enough to create intimacy. Emily mirrored him, unconsciously. Their movements aligned. Small things, but undeniable. At one point, Ryan said something quieter, something Daniel couldn't hear, but he saw the effect. Emily's smile faded slightly, replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. She looked down briefly, then back at him, and for a moment, the world around them disappeared. Daniel looked away, not because he wanted to, but because he needed to breathe. This wasn't physical, not yet. There were no hands intertwined, no stolen kisses, no obvious betrayal. But this was something else, something deeper, something harder to define, and somehow harder to forgive. After an hour, Emily checked her phone, said something to Ryan. He nodded, smiled, and then he placed his hand lightly on her back as they stood. A small gesture, almost nothing, but it lingered half a second too long. Daniel felt it like a fracture. They vowed out together, but this time they separated at the corner. No hug, no goodbye that lingered. Just distance. Just enough to make it look innocent. Daniel stayed where he was, sitting alone, the untouched drink in front of him reflecting dim light. He had what he needed now. Not proof, not something he could throw on the table and demand an explanation for, but something worse, clarity. Because now he understood. It wasn't about one sentence. It wasn't about one night. It was about something that had been building quietly, right in front of him. When Emily came home later that night, Daniel was already there, sitting in the living room, lights dim, the same as always, but not the same at all. "You're home early," she said, setting her back down. "Yeah." A pause. "I grabbed a drink after work," she added casually. Daniel nodded. "I figured." She looked at him. Something in his tone caught her attention. "What does that mean?" Daniel met her gaze. For a moment he considered telling her everything. The bar, Ryan, the way she laughed, the way she looked at him. But instead he said nothing. Because this wasn't the moment. Not yet. "Nothing," he said finally. And in that moment, the distance between them became something permanent. That night, Daniel didn't lie awake. He didn't replay the sentence. Didn't question what he had seen. Because now, there was nothing left to imagine. Only something left to confirm. And he knew it was just a matter of time. There's a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when suspicion turns into understanding. For Daniel Harper, that moment didn't come with shouting. It came with clarity. And clarity, he realized, was far more devastating. It began with something small. A notification. Not on Emily's phone this time, but on her laptop. She had left it open on the dining table that morning, rushing out with a distracted kiss on his cheek and a hurried, "I'll be late tonight." Daniel hadn't intended to look. That's what he told himself. But intention didn't matter anymore. Because the line had already been crossed days ago. The moment he followed her. The moment he chose silence over confrontation. The moment he started needing the truth more than he feared it. The screen dimmed slightly as he approached, then lit up again with a soft movement of the mouse. An email thread. Subject line, "Read last night." His chest tightened. He stared at it for a long moment. This was it. Not proof of something physical, but something else. Something harder to define. Harder to defend. Slowly he clicked. The message wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. "Ryan, I meant what I said last night. You don't have to keep pretending you're okay. Not with me." Daniel's jaw tightened. He scrolled. Emily's reply. Sent at 11:20 a.m. The same night she came home drunk. The same night she whispered that sentence. "Emily, I don't even know who I am lately. Everything feels flat. Like I'm just going through the motions. But when I'm with you, it's different. I feel like myself again." Daniel stopped breathing. Not because he didn't understand, but because he understood too well. This wasn't about attraction. Not entirely. This wasn't just about late nights, or drinks, or proximity. This was about something deeper. Something far more intimate. She was giving another man the parts of herself she had taken away from him. Daniel leaned back slowly, the chair creaking softly beneath him. His eyes stayed on the screen, scanning every word again, searching for something to disprove it, something to soften it. But there was nothing. Only honesty, raw, unfiltered, and not meant for him. He kept reading, further up the thread, fragments of conversations, days, weeks, maybe longer. "Ryan, you deserve more than routine, Emily. Emily, it's not that simple. Ryan, it never is, but that doesn't mean you settle." Settle, the word echoed. Daniel closed the laptop gently, not out of anger, but because he couldn't look at it anymore. For a long time, he just stood there, in the quiet apartment, surrounded by things that suddenly felt unfamiliar. The furniture, the walls, the life they had built. He thought about the early years, when Emily used to sit across from him at this very table, talking endlessly about her dreams. Not just career goals, but everything. Where she wanted to travel, the kind of life she imagined, the fears she never told anyone else. Back then, he had been the one she turned to, the one she trusted, the one she shared herself with. Somewhere along the way, that had changed. And he hadn't noticed. Not until it was too late. That night, Emily came home just after 10. She looked tired, but there was something else too. A softness in her expression. The kind that didn't belong to exhaustion. "How was your day?" she asked, slipping off her coat. "Fine," Daniel replied. He watched her carefully, not searching anymore, just observing. She moved around the kitchen, absent-mindedly preparing something to eat, humming under her breath. A quiet, almost unconscious sound. Daniel couldn't remember the last time she had done that. "You seem in a good mood," he said. Emily glanced at him, slightly surprised. "Do I?" "Yeah." A pause. Then she smiled faintly. "Just a good day at work, I guess." Daniel nodded. Of course, work. Ryan must have been there, he added. The name settled into the space between them. Emily's movements slowed slightly. Yeah, she said. And this time, there was no denial, no deflection, just acceptance. Daniel studied her. You talk to him a lot, he said. It wasn't a question. Emily looked at him then, really looked, as if trying to understand what he was seeing, or what he already knew. He's my boss, she replied. That's not what I meant. Silence. For a moment, it felt like something might finally break open, like the truth might step into the room uninvited. But Emily turned away first. I'm not doing this tonight, Danielle. Not doing this. Again. Danielle didn't push, because now he didn't need to. Later, as they lay in bed, the distance between them felt wider than ever. Not just physical, but emotional, irreversible. Emily scrolled through her phone, the soft glow illuminating her face. Danielle watched from the side. Can I ask you something? He said quietly. She didn't look up. Yeah? When was the last time you felt happy with me? Her hand stilled. The question hung there, heavy, unavoidable. I don't know, she said finally. Honest and devastating. Daniel nodded slowly. Okay. That was it. No argument, no raised voices, just a quiet acknowledgement of something already lost. Emily turned off her phone and lay down, her back facing him. Within minutes, her breathing evened out. Sleep came easily to her, but not to Daniel. He stared into the darkness, the words from the email replaying in his mind. When I'm with you, it's different. I feel like myself again. He realized then, this wasn't about betrayal in the way people usually think. It wasn't about a moment, or a mistake, or even desire. It was about replacement. Someone else had become the place she went to feel understood, to feel alive, to feel seen. And Daniel, the man who once held that place, had been quietly moved aside. Not with cruelty, not with intention, but with time, distance, silence. And now, he was just the one she came home to. Daniel closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to escape the truth that had finally taken shape. He hadn't lost her in a single moment. He had lost her slowly, piece by piece, conversation by conversation, silence by silence. And the worst part? He didn't know when it had started, only that now, it might already be too late. The truth doesn't always explode. Sometimes it waits, patiently, until silence can no longer hold it. It happened on a Tuesday night. No special occasion, no argument leading up to it. Just a quiet dinner that felt like every other one. Except this time, Daniel had already decided. He wasn't going to let it pass. Emily sat across from him at the table, absently pushing food around her plate. The television murmured softly in the background, filling the space neither of them seemed willing to occupy. Daniel watched her. Not with suspicion anymore, not even with anger, just certainty. Who is he to you? The question cut through the room cleanly. Emily froze, her fork covered midair. What? She asked, though her voice had already changed. You know who I'm talking about. Daniel's tone was calm. Too calm. That's what made it dangerous. Emily slowly set her fork down. Daniel, I told you, he's my boss. No, he said quietly. That's what you call him. Silence. Heavy, pressing, unavoidable. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his hands resting on the table. I saw you, he said. 3 simple words. Emily's breath caught. What do you mean? She asked, but the denial lacked conviction. The bar, Daniel continued. Thursday night, after work. Her face changed then, not dramatically, but enough. Enough for the truth to step into the room without needing permission. You followed me? She whispered. Daniel didn't answer immediately, because that wasn't the point. I watched you, he said instead, the way you look at him. Emily closed her eyes briefly, as if that hurt more than the accusation itself. It's not what you think, she said, the words automatic. Daniel almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was expected. Then tell me what it is, he said. His voice was steady, but beneath it something was breaking. Emily stood up, walking away from the table, her arms crossing tightly over her chest. I don't even know where to start, she muttered. Start with the truth. She let out a shaky breath, turned back to face him, and for the first time there was no performance, no deflection, just exhaustion. It didn't just happen, she said quietly. Daniel felt that more than anything else you could have said, because it confirmed what he already knew. This wasn't a moment, it was a process. How long? He asked. Emily hesitated, and in that hesitation he understood. But he needed to hear it. How long, Emily? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Months. The word landed like weight, heavy, final. Daniel looked down briefly, his jaw tightening. Months, he repeated. Not a question, just confirmation. It's not like we planned it, she added quickly. It just grew, Daniel finished for her. She nodded, and that hurt more than denial ever could. Daniel stood up slowly, the chair scraping softly against the floor. And what exactly is it? He asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you gave another man everything you stopped giving me. Emily flinched. Daniel, do you love him? The question came faster this time, sharper, more direct. Emily didn't answer, and that was the answer. Daniel let out a slow breath, running a hand through his hair. Say it, he said. I don't know, she admitted, her voice trembling. I didn't ask what you're sure about. I asked what you feel. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. I feel different when I'm with him, she said. There it was. Not a confession of love, but something just as dangerous. Daniel nodded slowly. I read your emails. Emily's eyes widened. What? You told him you feel like yourself again. The words were quiet, but they cut deeper than anything else. Emily looked like she had been exposed, not just in action, but in truth. I didn't mean for you to see that, she whispered. That's not the problem. Silence fell again, but this time it wasn't avoidance. It was reckoning. When did I stop being enough? Daniel asked. The question wasn't accusatory. It was something else, something raw. Emily's composure broke then. I don't know, she said, her voice rising for the first time. It wasn't one moment, okay? It wasn't like I woke up one day and decided you weren't enough. Then what was it? She shook her head, tears slipping down now. It was everything, she said. The routine, the silence, the way we stopped talking about anything that mattered. Daniel stared at her. We talked? No, she said softly. We functioned. The distinction hit harder than any accusation. Emily took a step closer, her voice quieter now. You were always there, Daniel, she said. Reliable, steady, predictable. Each word landed like something both good and insufficient. But you stopped seeing me, she continued. Really seeing me. Daniel's expression shifted slightly. Or maybe, she added, her voice breaking, I stopped letting you. That hung between them, because it wasn't entirely his fault, and it wasn't entirely hers. I didn't go looking for this, Emily said. But when I started talking to Ryan, it was like... Like what? Like someone actually heard me again. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, because that was the part he couldn't fight. Not with logic, not with anger. And you never thought to tell me? He asked. I tried, she said, in small ways, but we were already here. She gestured between them. The distance, the quiet, the space where something used to exist. And sleeping with him? Daniel asked. The question was direct, unavoidable. Emily shook her head quickly. No. He studied her, long, carefully, and this time he believed her. But it didn't matter, because somehow that almost made it worse. So you gave him everything except your body, Daniel said quietly. Emily flinched. That's not fair. No, he replied, it's not. Silence, longer this time, heavier. Daniel stepped back slightly, putting space between them. Not out of anger, but necessity. I kept thinking it was something I did, he said, something I missed. Emily's eyes softened. It's not that simple. I know, he said. That's what makes it worse. For a moment, neither of them moved, didn't speak, didn't try to fix it, because some things, once spoken, can't be undone. Finally, Daniel looked at her, not with suspicion, not even with pain, but with something quieter, something final. What happens now? He asked. Emily didn't answer, because there was no easy answer left, only consequences. The end of a marriage rarely announces itself. There's no single moment where everything disappears. Instead, it unravels, thread by thread, until one day you look around and realize there's nothing left holding it together. The morning after the confrontation felt unfamiliar, not because anything dramatic had happened overnight, but because something essential had shifted, permanently. Daniel woke up early, out of habit, or maybe out of avoidance. The other side of the bed was empty, cold. He found Emily in the kitchen, standing still, not moving, just staring at a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was no script for this part, no routine left to fall back on. Did you sleep? Daniel asked finally. Emily shook her head. No. He nodded. Me neither. The conversation was simple, surface level, but beneath it, everything was exposed. I have a meeting today, Emily said, her voice distant. I can't miss it. Daniel almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it felt absurd. Of course she did. Life didn't stop, even when something important ended. Of course, he said. She hesitated, as if waiting for something else, an argument, a reaction. But Daniel didn't give her one. Not anymore. That was the first sign. Not anger, not shouting, but absence. The days that followed were quieter than either of them expected. No dramatic fights, no slammed doors, no accusations thrown across the room. Just distance. They moved around each other like strangers sharing the same space. Careful, polite, detached. Emily stopped explaining her late nights. Daniel stopped asking. One evening, she came home past 10. Daniel was sitting on the couch, reading something on his tablet. "You didn't text," he said without looking up. "I didn't think it mattered anymore," she replied. He nodded slightly. "Yeah, that makes sense. No anger, no sarcasm, just acceptance." And somehow that hurt more than anything else. Because indifference feels like the final stage of something that once mattered. Emily stood there for a moment, unsure. "I was with Ryan," she said. The truth, offered without pressure, without fear. Daniel looked up then, not shocked, not even surprised, just aware. "Okay, that was all." Emily's chest tightened slightly. "You're not going to say anything? What do you want me to say?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Something." Daniel studied her, and for the first time, he understood something clearly. "You want me to fight for this?" he said quietly. Emily didn't respond, but she didn't deny it either. Daniel let out a slow breath. "I did," he said. "I just didn't realize I was fighting alone." That landed, hard. Emily looked down, her voice softer now. "That's not fair, isn't it?" Silence. They stood there, two people who once knew each other completely, now struggling to understand what was left. "I never meant to hurt you," Emily said. Daniel nodded. "I know." And he meant it. That was the worst part. Because this wasn't cruelty. It wasn't betrayal born out of malice. It was something quieter, something slower. Disconnection. "I think we lost each other a long time ago," Emily whispered. Daniel didn't argue, because he had come to the same conclusion. The difference was, he had stayed, and she had looked elsewhere. That night, they sat across from each other one last time. No television, no distractions, just honesty. "I don't know how to fix this," Emily said. Daniel nodded. "I don't think we can." The words didn't feel dramatic, they didn't echo, they didn't shatter anything, because everything had already been broken. "What about us?" she asked. It was a simple question, but it carried years inside it. Daniel looked at her, really looked, for the first time in a long time. And what he saw wasn't just the woman who hurt him. It was the woman he had loved. The woman he had built a life with. The woman who had slowly become a stranger. "I think," he began slowly, "we already answered that." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away, because deep down, she knew. The next few days were practical, cold, necessary. Lawyers, conversations about the apartment, dividing things that once felt shared. There were no fights, no attempts to win, no desire to punish, just two people, letting go. On her last night in the apartment, Emily stood by the window, the same place Daniel used to stand, looking out at the city. "It's strange," she said quietly, "how something can feel so permanent, and then just end." Daniel stood a few feet away. "It doesn't end all at once," he replied. "It just reaches a point where you can't pretend anymore." Emily nodded. A tear slipped down, but she didn't wipe it away. "I did love you," she said. Daniel didn't hesitate. "I know, and part of me still does." That was harder. Daniel looked down briefly, then back at her. "Sometimes, that's not enough," he said. And that was the truth. The kind no one wants to accept, but everyone eventually understands. That night, they slept in separate rooms. Not out of anger, but because there was nothing left to hold on to. The illusion was gone, and all that remained was reality. Time doesn't heal, not in the way people like to believe. It doesn't erase, it doesn't restore what was lost. It simply creates distance. And sometimes, that distance is the only thing that makes survival possible. 6 months later, Chicago felt different to Daniel Harper. Or maybe he was the one who had changed. The apartment was gone, sold. Too many memories in the walls. Too many silences echoing through rooms that once felt full. Now, Daniel lived in a smaller place across the city. Less polished, less perfect, but somehow more honest. There were no framed photos on the walls yet. No carefully curated decor. Just space. And for the first time in a long time, that space didn't feel empty. It felt open. Mornings were quieter now. No routine built around someone else. No unspoken tension lingering between coffee cups and half-finished conversations. Just Daniel. His thoughts. His choices. He had started running again. Something he hadn't done in years. Early mornings along the lake, the cold air cutting through his lungs, grounding him in something physical, something real. It wasn't about fitness. It was about feeling something that wasn't confusion. or loss. Work had changed too. Not externally, his projects were still demanding, his reputation intact. But internally, he approached it differently. Less like an escape, more like a part of a life he was slowly rebuilding. Because that's what this was. Not recovery, not closure, but reconstruction. And the hardest part wasn't losing Emily. It was understanding who he was without her. At first, that question had terrified him. Now, it felt like something he was finally ready to answer. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the skyline, Daniel sat on his small balcony, a glass of bourbon in hand. This time, he drank it. His phone buzzed softly on the table beside him, a message from an unknown number. He stared at it for a moment before opening it. Emily, hi. I know I probably shouldn't reach out, but I just wanted to ask if you're okay. Daniel leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. 6 months, and this was the first time. He didn't reply immediately, not out of anger, not out of hesitation, but because he didn't feel the urgency anymore. Eventually, he typed back, Daniel, I'm okay. The reply came faster than he expected. Emily, I'm glad. I've been thinking about you. Daniel stared at the words. Once, they would have meant everything. Now, they felt distant, like echoes from a life he no longer lived. He didn't respond. Not right away, because some conversations don't need to be continued. Across the city, Emily sat alone in her apartment, smaller than the one she had shared with Daniel. Colder too, but not because of the space. Ryan wasn't there. He hadn't been for a while. At first, everything had felt intense, exciting, different, just like she had said. But intensity doesn't last. The late-night conversations became less frequent. The emotional connection once so consuming began to fade under the weight of reality. Ryan was still confident, still charismatic, still everything that had drawn her in. But he wasn't Daniel. He didn't know her history, didn't understand her silences, didn't notice the small things that Daniel once did without trying. And slowly, Emily began to realize something she hadn't expected. What she had felt with Ryan wasn't depth, it was contrast, a reaction to something missing, not something real enough to replace it. By the time she understood that, it was already too late. She sat on her couch, her phone still in her hand, staring at Daniel's last message. I'm okay. So simple, so final. She typed, deleted, typed again. Emily, do you ever think about us? She hesitated, then sent it. Minutes passed, then longer. No reply. And in that silence, she understood something Daniel had already learned months ago. Not all endings come with closure. Some just stay unfinished. Back on his balcony, Daniel read the message. He didn't respond. Not because he didn't care, but because he finally understood something important. Looking back wouldn't change what had already been lived. He set his phone down, his gaze drifting out toward the city lights. For the first time in a long time, his mind was quiet. I wish you were more like him. The sentence crossed his mind again, but this time it didn't hurt. Because now he understood. He was never meant to be like anyone else. And maybe that was never the problem. The problem was that somewhere along the way, they had both stopped being who they truly were. And by the time they realized it, they were already too far apart. Daniel took a slow sip of his drink, the warmth settling in his chest. Not as comfort, but as acceptance. Some things don't come back. Some people don't return. And some versions of yourself only exist in the past. But what remains isn't the loss. It's the quiet understanding that you survived it, and that somehow is enough.